It was just another Friday night when Jamie walked into my life with that ridiculous proposition. I'm Alex, by the way, and until that moment, I'd been perfectly content nursing my broken heart in solitude. 6 months had passed since Ethan had walked out on our 3-year relationship, claiming he needed space to find himself. Whatever that meant. I'd spent those months rebuilding my life piece by piece, focusing on my graphic design career, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and swearing off relationships entirely. I was doing just fine on my own. Thank you very much. The bar was crowded that night, the kind of upscale place where everyone seems to be having more fun than you are. My friends had dragged me out, insisting I needed to get back out there. I was nursing my second gin and tonic when Jamie slid into the seat beside me. You look like someone who could use a better story to tell tomorrow, he said with a grin that somehow managed to be both cocky and endearing. Jamie was the kind of attractive that's hard to ignore, tall with dark curly hair that fell just right, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and a confidence that filled the room. He was also, as I would soon discover, nursing his own heartbreak, though his approach to healing was dramatically different from mine. My ex is here, he said, leaning in close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. See that guy by the pool table? The one in the blue button-down who looks like he stepped out of a J.Crew catalog? That's Ryan. We broke up 3 weeks ago, and he's already here with someone new. There was an edge to Jamie's voice, a raw hurt beneath the casual tone that I recognized all too well. That's rough, I offered, not sure where this conversation was heading. But I'm not sure how that involves me. Jamie's smile turned mischievous. I have a proposition for you. Pretend to be my date tonight. Just for an hour or two. Ryan needs to see that I've moved on too. When I hesitated, he added, I'll buy your drinks for the night. I should have said no. Every self-help book I'd read during my post-Ethan recovery period would have advised against getting involved in someone else's revenge fantasy. But there was something compelling about Jamie, something in the way he looked at me like I was the solution to all his problems. Plus, free drinks. Fine, I said, but just for tonight. Little did I know that just for tonight would turn into weeks, then months, of the most complicated fake relationship I could have imagined. What started as a simple plan to make Ryan jealous evolved into an elaborate charade that would test the boundaries of what was real and what was pretend for both of us. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jamie. Last night worked perfectly. Ryan couldn't stop staring. We should do it again. I stared at my phone, torn between curiosity and caution. The sensible part of me knew I should end this before it began. But there was another part, the part that had felt more alive last night than I had in months, that was intrigued by the possibility of continuing this charade. We met for coffee that afternoon to establish our rules of engagement, as Jamie called them. We need a convincing backstory, he said, pulling out a notebook like we were planning a heist instead of a fake relationship. How we met, how long we've been seeing each other, that sort of thing. I couldn't help but laugh at his intensity. Is this really necessary? Can't we just say we met at a bar and hit it off? Jamie shook his head, his expression serious. Ryan and I have mutual friends. If we're going to convince people this is real, we need details. The more specific, the better. He tapped his pen against the notebook. So, how did we meet? We spent the next hour crafting our fictional romance. According to our story, we'd met at a friend's art exhibition 3 weeks ago. I'd been admiring a particularly abstract piece, and Jamie had approached to tell me it was hanging upside down. We'd spent the rest of the evening debating modern art and exchanged numbers at the end of the night. It was just detailed enough to be believable but vague enough that we wouldn't get caught in a lie. And what about physical boundaries? I asked, trying to sound casual. If we're supposed to be dating, people will expect a certain level of intimacy. Jamie's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker there, something beyond the calculated determination he'd been displaying. Hand-holding is fine. Maybe the occasional arm around the shoulder or waist. Nothing that makes you uncomfortable. He paused. And kissing only if absolutely necessary to sell it. I nodded, ignoring the slight flutter in my stomach at the thought. This was just an act, after all. A performance with a specific goal, helping Jamie show Ryan what he was missing. I told myself I was just being a good friend, even though Jamie and I had known each other for less than 24 hours. Our first official date was the following weekend at a party thrown by one of Jamie's friends, a party Ryan was sure to attend. I spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear, finally settling on a fitted black shirt and my best jeans. You clean up nice, Jamie said when he picked me up, his eyes doing a quick scan that left me feeling oddly self-conscious. The party was in full swing when we arrived, the apartment crowded with people I didn't know. Jamie kept his hand firmly on the small of my back as he introduced me to his friends, his touch sending unexpected warmth through me. "This is Alex," he'd say, with a softness in his voice that almost convinced me. "We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now." I played my part, laughing at his jokes, leaning into his touch, sharing knowing glances that suggested a deeper connection than we actually had. It was surprisingly easy to fall into the role, to let myself believe, if only for a night, that someone like Jamie could be genuinely interested in someone like me. Ryan arrived an hour into the party. I knew it was him immediately from the way Jamie's body tensed beside me. Ryan was handsome in a conventional way, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of tan that suggested regular vacations to exotic locations. He was also clearly surprised to see Jamie with someone new. "That's him," Jamie whispered, his lips close to my ear. "Time to make this look real." Before I could respond, he slipped his arm around my waist and pulled me closer, his eyes never leaving mine. There was a question in them, a silent asking of permission. I nodded slightly, and then his lips were on mine. It was meant to be a show for Ryan's benefit, a calculated move in this game of emotional chess they were playing. But something unexpected happened when Jamie kissed me. The world around us seemed to fade away. His lips were soft, the kiss gentle but insistent, and I found myself responding with an enthusiasm that wasn't entirely feigned. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless, and Jamie looked slightly dazed. "Well," he said, his voice lower than usual. "That should give him something to think about." I glanced over to see Ryan watching us, his expression a mixture of surprise and something that might have been regret. Mission accomplished, I supposed. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between Jamie and me. The line between pretending and reality had blurred, at least for me, and I wasn't sure how to redraw it. The weeks that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Jamie and I would meet several times a week, always in places where we might run into Ryan or his friends. We'd hold hands, share inside jokes, take photos together for social media, all the things real couples do. And with each passing day, it became harder to remember that none of it was real. Our friends began to notice the change in me. "You seem happier," my roommate commented one evening as I got ready for another date with Jamie. "This thing with Jamie, is it still just for show?" I avoided her eyes as I applied my lipstick. "Of course it is. We're just friends helping each other out." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Somewhere along the way, I developed genuine feelings for Jamie. Every smile, every touch, every late-night conversation had chipped away at the walls I'd built after Ethan. The problem was, I had no idea if Jamie felt the same way or if I was just a convenient prop in his ongoing revenge against Ryan. Jamie, for his part, seemed increasingly invested in our charade. What had started as occasional appearances at parties where Ryan might be present had evolved into regular dates, dinners, movies, even a weekend trip to the coast. He'd meet me for lunch during workdays, bringing my favorite coffee and asking about my projects. He remembered details about my life that even some of my closest friends forgot. It felt real, which made it all the more confusing. "We should meet each other's families," Jamie suggested one evening as we walked back from dinner. "It would make our relationship more believable." I stopped walking, turning to face him. "Jamie, don't you think this is going a bit far? We've been doing this for almost 2 months now. Hasn't Ryan gotten the message?" Jamie's expression clouded. "He's still with that guy from the bar. They're getting serious." There was a vulnerability in his voice that I hadn't heard before. "I just need a little more time, Alex. Please." And because I was already in too deep, because I couldn't bear the thought of ending our arrangement and losing him completely, I agreed. The following weekend, I found myself sitting in Jamie's parents' dining room, answering questions about my career and hobbies while Jamie's hand rested comfortably on my knee. "Jamie hasn't brought anyone home in ages," his mother said, beaming at us. "Not since, well, you know." She didn't need to finish the sentence. "Not since Ryan." Jamie's father was more direct. "You seem good for him," he told me when Jamie was helping his mother clear the dishes. "He smiles more with you than he ever did with Ryan." I didn't know how to respond to that. Was it true? Did Jamie smile more with me? Or was he just a better actor than I gave him credit for? The line between reality and pretense had become so blurred that I couldn't tell anymore. The turning point came at a gallery opening for one of Ryan's friends. Jamie had insisted we attend, even though I'd expressed reservations. It's the perfect opportunity, he'd said. Everyone who matters in Ryan's life will be there. They need to see that I've moved on. I'd agreed reluctantly, sensing that Jamie's obsession with proving something to Ryan was becoming unhealthy. But I was in no position to judge, not when I was pretending to be in a relationship with someone who didn't actually want me. The gallery was crowded, the walls lined with abstract paintings that looked to my untrained eye like random splashes of color. Jamie was tense beside me, his eyes scanning the room until they locked on Ryan, who was standing near the bar with his new boyfriend. "Let's get a drink," Jamie said, guiding me through the crowd with a hand on my back. We positioned ourselves strategically within Ryan's line of sight, and Jamie immediately became more animated, laughing too loudly at my comments and touching me constantly. A hand on my arm, fingers brushing my cheek, lips close to my ear. I played along, though each touch felt like a reminder of what I could have, but didn't. Then Jamie spotted Ryan watching us, and something in his expression changed. Before I could react, he had me pressed against the wall, his body close to mine, his lips on my neck. "Jamie," I whispered, aware of the eyes on us. "What are you doing?" Making it convincing, he murmured against my skin. But this wasn't like our previous displays of affection. This felt possessive, almost aggressive, less about affection and more about marking territory. I felt like a prop in a performance that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the man watching from across the room. I pushed him away gently but firmly. "I need some air," I said, and walked out of the gallery without looking back. Jamie found me outside a few minutes later, his expression confused. "What happened in there? Did I do something wrong?" The question sparked something in me. Anger, frustration, hurt. All the emotions I'd been suppressing for weeks. "What happened is that you crossed a line, Jamie. This whole thing, it's gone too far. I'm not a tool for you to use to get back at your ex. I'm a person with feelings." Jamie's face fell. "I know that, Alex. I never meant to." "Never meant to what? Use me?" "Because that's exactly what you've been doing." The words poured out of me, unstoppable now that I'd started. "You don't care about me. You care about making Ryan jealous. And I've been stupid enough to go along with it because—" I stopped, unwilling to admit the truth. "Because what?" Jamie pressed, stepping closer. I took a deep breath. "Because somewhere along the way, I started to have real feelings for you. But this isn't real for you, is it? It's just an elaborate revenge scheme." Jamie stared at me, his expression unreadable. "That's not true," he said finally. "It started that way, yes. But things have changed. I've changed." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But the image of him watching Ryan as he kissed me was still fresh in my mind. "I can't do this anymore, Jamie. I can't keep pretending." I walked away then, ignoring his calls for me to come back. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't keep living in this limbo between real and fake, between being Jamie's actual boyfriend and being a convenient stand-in. The week that followed was one of the loneliest I'd experienced since Ethan left. Jamie called and texted repeatedly, but I ignored him, needing space to sort through my feelings. My friends tried to console me, but how could I explain that I was heartbroken over losing something I never actually had? Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jamie standing there, soaked from the rain, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood in my living room, dripping water onto my carpet, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About us, about Ryan, about what I've been doing these past months." I crossed my arms, protecting myself from whatever he was about to say. And you were right. I was using you at first. I was so hurt by Ryan, so angry, that all I could think about was getting back at him." Jamie ran a hand through his wet hair. "But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about him and started being about you. About us." I wanted to believe him, but I'd been hurt too many times before. How can I trust that? How do I know this isn't just another performance? Jamie took a step closer. "Because I broke things off with Ryan for good. I told him the truth, that what we had wasn't healthy, that I'd been using you to make him jealous, and that in the process, I'd fallen in love with you for real." My heart stuttered at his words. "You told him that?" Jamie nodded. I also told him that I'd probably ruined my chance with you because I was too blinded by revenge to see what was right in front of me. He reached for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let him take it. I'm in love with you, Alex. Not as part of some scheme, not to get back at Ryan, but because you're you. Because you make me laugh, and you call me out when I'm being an idiot, and you see the real me beneath all the bravado. I wanted to throw my arms around him, to tell him I felt the same way. But there was still a part of me that was afraid. How do I know this is real? How do I know you won't wake up tomorrow and realize you're still in love with Ryan? Jamie's expression was serious. I can't predict the future. All I can tell you is how I feel right now. And right now, the thought of losing you terrifies me more than anything else. He squeezed my hand. I don't expect you to trust me right away. I know I need to earn that trust back. But I'm asking for a chance to do that. A chance for us to start over, for real this time. I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But all I saw was sincerity, vulnerability, and hope. I think, I said slowly, that I would like that. The smile that spread across Jamie's face was unlike any I'd seen before. Not the calculated charm he'd used on Ryan, not the practiced grin he showed to strangers, but something genuine and a little uncertain. Can I kiss you? He asked. Not for show, not for anyone else. Just for us. I nodded, and when his lips met mine, it felt like the first real kiss we'd ever shared. There was no audience, no ulterior motive, just two people connecting in the most honest way possible. Starting over wasn't easy. We had to relearn each other without the pretense, had to figure out what parts of our relationship had been real and what parts had been performance. There were awkward moments, misunderstandings, and times when the shadow of our unusual beginning threatened to overshadow our present. But there were also moments of profound connection, of discovering that many of the things we'd pretended to feel for each other had been real all along. The way Jamie's eyes lit up when I talked about my art, the comfort I felt in his presence, the ease of our conversations, the natural rhythm we fell into when we were together. 3 months after that rainy night in my apartment, we ran into Ryan at a coffee shop. Jamie tensed beside me, and I braced myself for the old patterns to resurface. But instead, Jamie simply nodded at Ryan, his hand firmly in mine, and continued our conversation as if nothing had happened. Later, as we walked home, I asked him about it. Seeing Ryan didn't bother you? Jamie considered this. It did, but not in the way it used to. I realized something today. I don't hate Ryan anymore. I don't love him either. He's just someone I used to know. He looked at me, his eyes warm. Someone who led me to you, in a roundabout way. I squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of gratitude for this complicated, imperfect journey we'd taken. So, no more fake relationships? Jamie laughed, pulling me closer. No more fake anything. Just us, being real with each other. That's all I want. And as we walked home together, I reflected on the strange path that had brought us here. What had started as a scheme for revenge had transformed into something neither of us had expected, a love that was all the more precious for having been found in such unlikely circumstances. Sometimes, I realized, the most genuine connections emerge from the most inauthentic beginnings. And sometimes, pretending to be in love is just the first step toward the real thing. Total _char_count. 18,821.